Hey guys, Tim here from timkiptutorials.com and welcome to another Android development tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to have a visual representation of the Android life cycle. Now in our previous tutorial I sort of briefly explained how all these methods were fired off. So when your activity launched you have onCreate, onStart, onResume, and your activity is officially running. And then when you go outside of your application, your activity runs onPause. So then when the user returns to your activity, it will hit onResume. And then once you hit onPause again, go do something else, you're going to hit onStop whenever your app decides that it's going to be killed. It's going to come back and do onCreate again. And so when the activity is no longer visible, it hits onStop, and then the user comes back to the activity, it's going to hit onRestart. So an example of coming from onStop to onRestart would be if you press the home button on your application, or while you're in your application, and then you go launch your application again, it's going to hit onRestart. And then when you're finished using your application, whether you code in a finish method or your activity gets destroyed, it's going to call onDestroyed, and then your activity is going to shut down. So over here on the left, what I've done is just set up a basic project which in a class named main activity, which is extending activity, and at the top I've just declared a private final variable. You don't really need to know what this does at this moment, but I'll briefly explain it. Private means that this variable will only be accessible in this class alone. Final means that it can no longer be changed anywhere else in the code. So once it's set here, that's what it's set for. And the type of variable is string. In my variable name, I've just named tag, all uppercase. And so we have a private variable that can never be changed. That is a string with a variable name of tag. And all that is equal to tkt, which I put in double quotes. So when I call tag, it's going to output tkt. So down here, we have our normal onCreate method, which all I'm doing is it's just passing the super method for onCreate back. And then I'm calling this function or method called log. Now what log is it allows us to send messages to ourselves as we're running our application. It's not going to be visible on the device, but the program inside of Android Studio called the logcat will be able to detect these logs and will display them on the screen for you. So all I'm doing is I'm passing in my tag name as the first parameter. You could have put anything you would like here. You could say tkt here, you could name it Android, whatever you want. That's just a name that's going to show up in your log as an identifier for that actual line. So I'm just going to go back, set it to my variable name of tag, and it has to be a string. The two parameters for log is a string and a string. And you notice how I have log.d. The .d stands for debug. If I were to come down here and say log dot, and then you'll see a bunch of code hints that say D, E, I, V. They all stand for different levels of warnings. So this is a debug. I is for informational logs, V is for verbose, and W is for warning. So there's just different types of errors, or not errors, but logs that you can throw. So in this case I'm just using a debug so I can debug it. And the string I'm going to have displayed on the screen is onCreate, which is a reference to what method we're in right now. So you see that I have all these methods according to our chart over here. I have them all overwritten here. So I have onStart, which I'm logging onStart, onRestart. So you get the idea. I have everything coded out so it will hit every single function. So now what we can do is we can run this on your emulator. And if you haven't figured out how to run it, you just hit this little green arrow up here, and it will build your project, and then you can pick an emulator or an actual physical device that's plugged into your computer to run it on. So I have my emulator on the right here. I'm just going to go to my application that's installed. Go to the menu, and I'm going to hit Android Lifecycle. So when that starts, you'll see nothing happens on the screen. But if you do, you can come back over here, and in this Android tab right here, number 6, click on that, and you'll see that an Android DDMS comes up. It might be at the bottom. You can click at the top and drag it. And you'll probably see a bunch more things, depending on if you've just launched your emulator or installed your application. So what I like to do is I like to use this drop down. I'm going to go to debug because remember we're using log.d. And in this little search box here, remember my tag name was that I set to tkt. I'm just going to type tkt in. What that's going to do is filter out all the results and only show the ones that I want to see. As you can see, we have 3 lines here: on create, on start, and on resume. So those match exactly with what the activity is supposed to do when it first starts up: on create, on start, and on resume. So now the activity is running. So say we're over here in our emulator and we go to the home screen. It looks like we have a couple more lines. Let's see what they are. We have on pause, and then we have on stop. So remember, on pause is when the activity is when a different activity comes into the foreground. So in this case, the foreground activity was the home screen. So your application that I'm running now goes into the on pause mode, and the activity is no longer visible, so it went to on stop. So now what's going to happen if we go back to our activity? We're going to hit the menu again. We're going to go back to Android Lifecycle. See here we have some more lines. And now we've hit on restart, on start, and on resume. So what it did, while we were here on stop, I navigated back to the activity. It went to on restart, and then it went to start, and then on resume, and now the activity is running again. So you can see how this life cycle is sort of following the chart exactly how we expect it to. So what happens when we actually hit the back button on our activity? So I'm just going to hit back. Notice how we've hit on pause, on stop, and now we've hit on destroy. So that basically means, since the back button is a way to actually finish your activity or destroy it, I'm sorry, hold on, let me go back. We were running, we hit the back button, so it runs through on pause, on stop, and since we are finishing and destroying the activity by pushing the back button, we hit on destroy and the activity shuts down. So now our activity is actually gone from the memory, it's shut down, we have no reference to it anymore. So now, when we go back and run Android Lifecycle, you'll notice that we started right over from the top, on create, on start, on resume. Which makes sense because we've shut down our activity, we went back and started again. It's going to start all the way from activity launched, on create, on start, on resume. So that's sort of a visual representation of how it sort of works. In your emulator, if you're in your application and something else comes up, it's going to go to on pause, and it's going to go to on stop. You can always go back to it, granted that the operating system has not destroyed your activity in case of memory issues. It's going to hit the on restart again, and then it's going to hit on restart, and then it's going to go to on start and on resume, and then your activity is going to launch again. So sorry for the sort of confusion, but you can sort of see it's going to follow all these. Alright, and that should do it for our visual representation of an Android lifecycle activity. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope to see you in the next one.